Greetings and welcome to the Pure Report. I'm your host, Rob Ludeman, and it is still time to bring the orange, and I'm thrilled to have back in studio. I can't keep you away from this place, Mr. Andrew Sillifant, Solution Architect, which I mess up your title all the time. What are you going by these days?
It's title Solutions Director.
Director.
But Jack of all trades works too.
Yeah, but also really smart database guy, and we've been featuring you. You're here. It's easy to get you on, but also these are fun things to talk about. We're going to be going into all things Oracle 26 AI and what enterprises and what other organizations need to do to prepare for that. Welcome back. How's it feel to continue to be a featured guest on the program? Are you wearing out your welcome here?
I love talking, so check. I love talking about data, check. You can't really go wrong, and you and I seem to just riff off each other in really fun ways, so yeah, great to be here.
It works, and that's what happens when you know somebody for 6 or 7 years, and you've also spent a lot of time not talking about data and just talking in general about things. So I have to admit, I had a line on here because I wrote this a little while back about, hey, let's talk about the weather, because again, you're, coming here from England. And when I wrote this, it says a bit about the weather recently. So much rain. It feels like London.
Please stop lying through your teeth. It's 84 degrees right now. It shows you what a couple of weeks will do, huh?
Right? Yeah. Well, and I was just telling you where I live, like 10 miles that way, it's probably more like 93. We get about a 5 or 10 degree differential because we're right over here by the bay, which cools things off a little bit. So much more warm at home. So hopefully you're handling that pretty well.
Thank goodness for AC.
Oh, AC is great, right? That was a requirement when we went house hunting way long ago. I said, what do you want in a house? I'm like, you can pick whatever you want, right? Whatever it looks like. The only thing I want is I want central air.
Your requirements are very
That was my requirement.
Covered.
That was top of the list. And then everything else was kind of down here.
In England, all you've got is, can you open the windows and can you heat the house up? There's no such thing as cool the house down.
No, that's non-central air. Non-central air. All right, let's dive into it because I know you've been doing a lot of thought around this, and I cribbed this a little bit from a thought-provoking blog that you wrote on this because you do spend a lot of time talking, but also some of that talk also transfers its way into written content, which is usually quite interesting. Oracle database. So folks who have been listening for a while know that I came from that place and so have a history there. So I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, but also I still find it interesting and fascinating just to look at decades ago how many different database variants were out there, variants. And now, would you say the database wars are over because there are just some predominant players, or is it kind of the big enterprise ones and then a whole bunch of open source thing? Like what's the landscape there?
Okay, so first, let's describe Oracle appropriately. It is the database industrial complex. It is unassailable. If you think about the provenance of Oracle, where it came from, 50 years ago now?
Yeah.
It came out of DoD contracts. This thing was built to be indestructible, and it's probably been rebuilt a few times. It is not going away. Yeah. But it's also so hard, and trying to get it out of those big enterprise environments is probably near impossible. Why would you change this thing? It already does everything you need. And so what you've got is this bifurcation of let's call it the database market. And there's more complexity to it, but let's just talk about databases. You've got the databases that have been there for so long, have iterated so long, they are trustworthy, and they are mission proven. Then you've got what I would describe the niche use case databases that are exploiting gaps between these very big monolithic systems and small purpose-built systems like where MySQL used to be. And there's gray space in between. And so PlanetScale does that, etc. But the reality is Microsoft SQL and Oracle database from an enterprise perspective are 50+% of the market. Yeah. And so you can't turn around without seeing them somewhere.
But you make great points, right? The reasons that they're still there is that they were built to be industrial, to be non-breakable, unbreakable, like Larry's Linux, unbreakable Linux, if you remember that one. I digress. But they're feature-rich, and they stay up and they stay running, and that's one of the critical things that you need with a database is that uptime, right? Is the uptime and the performance. I looked, through show notes for this, and I looked back at things I was writing about what we did well for database 8 years ago when I joined, and a lot of it's still the same. There's just more and different features and capabilities that have come online as we got to cloud, right? 19C, C for cloud, right? And now we're hitting 26 for AI. Like, we'll be really explicit about what those letters are. If you look back at the focus on cloud 10 years ago, and that was a big strategic push for Oracle around 2013, 2014, kind of the same feeling right here, right? With AI, with Oracle capturing on this momentum and repositioning the database. All those cloud things are still in there, and they certainly have had a lot of momentum with OCI, but now they're looking to capitalize on AI and what they can drive both into the software platform itself, but also the ecosystem around it.
What's really interesting is like how cyclical everything is. So you go back 30 years, everyone's like structured data. You can do an ACID transaction. Now, then what happened was after you went, they had internet. So the very trend heavy database naming.
The internets?
So the 9i, 8i, and then you had G for grid.
Yep.
And then you had C for cloud.
Grid. My memory is failing me at times. I totally remember grid. Yeah.
So grid was the emergence of the platform, the
Right.
database as a platform. And then obviously it became cloud, which is more like platforms at scale-ish in a cloud-centric consumption manner. And now you're on AI. But the thing is, the difference between AI and where it started with, yes, we got data and it's ACID compliant, is probably more similar than you'd think, because it's all about back to the data level. Like, the platform can do everything we want.
Sure.
It's now how do we use data in a more appropriate way. And so that lifecycle, if you were to plot it on a Wikipedia page, you'd see it. It's not very difficult to miss. And where 26 AI got interesting, and this was more like the 23 AI era, was like how all of the converged database pieces were hitting at once. So I wrote a position paper probably in 2022. And in the position paper, one of the lines was like, the embedded capabilities of machine learning in database management systems will create new ways in which to consume structured and unstructured data, because you're bringing the consumers close to the source. And the closer you bring that machine learning model consumer into the database, the more iterative it becomes. And so, like, effectively, you'd see like just this explosion in compute needs. Now, the entire market went in a different direction. We were like, we love NVIDIA GPUs, not we just want bigger and bigger Intel CPUs. Which is even more interesting. But if you just go the full life cycle, you suddenly see, we can see where they are. So today, they are a fully converged database. They even advertise themselves as a fully converged database. You can combine structured data for legacy ERP, OLTP use cases with legacy analytics. You can still use them as a data warehouse, which most people are fine with. You can use them as a more modernized, unstructured store where you connect to external S3 tables and are able to interpret more modern file types. And then you can just go full circle and use it as an AI vector store for better context awareness. And you can also embed the model within the database. Like, you can see all of these things getting smashed together. And that's within the DNA of how Oracle engineers what they do. Like, they think about things in terms of monoliths, combinations, and then scale. And that's okay. And I think it works for these very large enterprises. They don't want 50 vendors. They want one thing that does everything at that layer.
At the same time, and I remember this from when we would talk to our customers about operating system version upgrades, and we all deal with that as consumers as well. How would you characterize the level of aggressiveness or conservatism that the average enterprise, let's say multi-billion-dollar company or even commercial kind of space, do they jump right in and start playing around with it? Or is there usually a period of time, or, how we do with iPhones, we wait for the next dot, we wait for the first couple dot releases to get some of the buggy things out?
This is the most interesting question, because if you think about it, 26 AI is the mature version of 23 AI,
sure.
but it's just 23.26.
Yeah, it's not that far off.
But you're in this weird middle space now.
Yeah.
Where we've got, semantically, we have a new version of Oracle database that is mature enough in the market that you could theoretically see adoption be faster than previous cycles.
I see.
But it's also the newest long-term release. My personal opinion, 19C for the most part still gives everybody what they need.
Yeah.
If you need new things, they'll probably start to experiment with them outside of forced upgrade cycles. Like, for example, you might have a version on Exadata that you have to force yourself into. But you'd kind of end up in this weird thing of, do you need the feature? If not, we're not going to rush into it.
Right.
But we are going to slowly go through the life cycle of update and upgrade and change, because that's the inevitable march towards what's happening. And to be clear, 26 AI is a long-term support release, even with 19C being extended until yonks years.
Yeah. How long do they do? Long term is what? How many years would they define that?
Oh, I don't know. If I told you a number, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been too long, so I can't remember what the number of years are. But I mean, there's a parallel, right? We experience this a little bit here at Everpure as well, which is we bring out compelling features, but customers sometimes just hold back on the release cycle on Purity, right? And then we have the release train, the different cycles, the long-term release. But it's always your hope that there's something compelling enough and interesting that has to drive business value, right? Or make some process easier to do, or change the ratio of the number of people that have to manage the widgets to bring in. Now, would you say with 26 AI there's enough there, or is it just going to be somebody really needs that feature, but other than that, yeah, we might upgrade in the next couple of years?
So I'm going to answer your question twice. So remember the question in your mind in case I forget it.
Yes.
So first, let's go through the taxonomy of how we got here. So 19C releases in good old 2019.
Yep.
They bring out, that's the last long-term release. They bring out 21C and they're like, cool. Most people don't really adopt feature releases unless they really need something. Then they brought out 23 AI for cloud only. So like Exadata Cloud at Customer, all of those things. And so we had this weird period of time where we were like looking at the side of our eyes like, what's coming?
Yeah.
And so
what's going on with on-prem, right?
Yeah. And so I suspect like regulated industry was fine for a while. And as time dragged on, it got a little bit odd. So like 3 years between anything and looking cloud only got a bit odd. And then in January, obviously, they released 26 AI. And I think this was just the cloud-only push, like from not Oracle's perspective, everything's perspective, started to look a little bit funny, largely because of AI.
Yeah.
So you think about the cost intensiveness of implementing AI strategies. That answers the problem statement in a nutshell. So yes, okay, we're going to release something that goes alongside it because that's an ecosystem play. So all of these things came together. What was your original question?
You told me to remember it, and I didn't.
It
was around the complexity of doing the upgrade, and is there a feature that you really want? Is that compelling enough? So what is in 26 AI that somebody would look at and go, oh, I need that, so we're going to move to it right now?
Okay, so the answer to that is twofold. I think there's a maturity conversation.
Do I still have to remember the question?
No, I'm answering the question. We're good. So I've realized what I've just done there. Okay, so there's maturity. So for example, in 19C, I think it was 19C, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's assume it was.
Yeah.
They released DBMS_cloud, which is the ability to go and connect to Parquet files in an S3 store. And there's ways to get it done, and you do it, and there's use cases for this, but you could do it. But where that entire market has headed in terms of unstructured data or semi-structured data inside S3 buckets is to go and use Iceberg as a table format to better understand and shorten the amount of time to understand all the semantics. But what's happened is the big data module that's included in 26 AI, I might be completely wrong. It's not included in 19C. And so there's a maturity path between these two. But however, this makes this even more complicated. There was a conversation probably around October around a lot of these things being backported into 19C anyway. Whether that happened or not, like so many things happen quickly, whatever. So you've got this maturity conversation. RMAN has also matured. I first encountered, what was this? They've got this new versioning thing of, it's not an epoch, but it's like this numbering. I was talking about it earlier, but when you run an RMAN, restore, etc., you've got an incarnation. And now you've got to keep in mind what the incarnation is, because you say, please restore me to incarnation, and it does funny checks. And so you go back to 19C, you're like, nah, I don't have to worry about this. 26 AI, it's enforced. You also have the enforcement of, what are these lovely things that everybody liked so much? Pluggable databases.
Oh, yeah.
So good old-fashioned...
Yeah.
Good old-fashioned Oracle is you just install an instance. An instance is synonymous with a database. Then comes the container, the CDB, and then the PDB. PDBs are kind of like the default now.
Yeah. So
you can still hack your way into the old way of doing it, but going forward, everything's PDB, CDB. And so you've got a maturation of that entire code base. It's traveled onwards. So to answer your question about what you'd adopt and where, I think you're looking at the maturity of the function you're implementing and how hardened it is in the latest versions.
And that's probably consistent with prior releases as well, right? And I mean, if you go back to all the different versions, it's, okay, how hard and how mature is that to give us a compelling reason to go upgrade? I had a stat of the episode, but we already kind of hit it. because we kind of hit, it was sort of, hey, 64% of the market is still running relational databases. Done. We already hit that at the top with, Oracle and SQL Server are there because they have those reliable features. And I guess the main message was, they're not going to go away, even with AI coming upon us and new capabilities coming in. But I did want to hit with an Oracle primer because as part of the blog, you talked very instructively about the different risks that come, and you hit different personas, which was really interesting because a lot of times we look at the database upgrade and just go, well, it's a database team and they're going to go off and then they're going to do their upgrade. But guess what? There's a lot of different spokes, right, that are touched. There are a lot of different areas that are impacted by the database, whether it's the application tier, the application layer, or the infrastructure that has to run it, or the networking, right? There's all these different pieces. But start with the DBA team itself, right? That upgrade. What is risky about the upgrade, aside from the obvious things about our business is down and we can't run?
Well, it's change management. So if we think about this like more holistically, first and foremost, you've got capacity planning, and that's compute as well as storage. So I come in, you go through a whole life cycle. You don't just bang an upgrade in today and pray.
Yeah.
Although I'd love to see that in practice. Keep in mind, Oracle's been around for 50 years. They figured a lot of this out already.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're coming in, you're thinking about it in terms of, are we doing it in a lower environment first? And if you're on shared storage, like pure storage, do you only have one array to do all this life cycle change with? Large enterprise, the answer is no. And so what you'd do is you'd have dev, test, QA, and you'd start at the lowest environment to be able to see what happens when you modernize certain components. And then you'd iteratively move through the process, moving between QA, dev test, until you get to an acceptance criteria, and then you'd go prod, and then you do all your cutover stuff. But at its core, you are incrementally creating more data as you go through this life cycle. And so Ron Ekins a few years ago told me this, and I was like, that's actually really good, which is the way Pure does snapshots in terms of like we're effectively they're metadata only, they don't consume more space.
Incremental changes,
Yeah. It de-risks that capacity bloat conversation as opposed to just creating more and more and more and more. Because not only are you deduping between your dev copies, you can have infinite number of them, they'll look the same, but you've also got this instrument to move between them, the snapshot. And so as a lifecycle tool, snapshotting does do a hell of a lot of work around de-risking that capacity issue. However, you've also got a new component. You're introducing change into the environment, and so tuning becomes more risky and more complex. Something that may have worked 5 years ago that somebody's forgotten about through institutional knowledge may not even be present today. And so you have to go through the life cycle of discovery again. And I've seen that in my career a little more often than I'd like. We forgot a thing is there, and whoops, we needed to understand why it was even there and if it's still relevant. One day you and I should have a conversation about Apache Spark. Like, yeah, I'd blow your mind with the crazy stuff there. And then finally, like, actually, we've already kind of talked about the migration of storage and refresh. Yeah. Like, let's quickly pivot this to the bigger thing, which is, do you migrate and modernize your database software first before you modernize your platform? And the answer is, typically you've already modernized the platform by the time you need to do the lifecycle around the database because of how time-consuming the database side is. Because the database isn't just the database side, it's the app integration. It's
all the connections.
The stakeholder management and everything. And so something new is emerging. And it's not new. It's kind of 5 years old, but it's new this cycle around for the on-prem customer base. You've got many more platform choices to go after. So if you think about your virtualization choice, that's much more nuanced this time around versus VMware's king. That's what we're going to go with.
Yeah.
So now it's a conversation around how the cost implications of what hypervisor you're going to sit on for the next 5 years. But it's not just hypervisors, because containers have become a viable option for that lifecycle conversation. You can now very easily spin up an Oracle 26i AI container and do whatever the hell you want on it. There are so many blogs on this. You've then got newer, more fangled hypervisor platforms, such as OpenShift virtualization, and then OpenShift also doubles as a Kubernetes flavor. Yeah. And so like the decisions are so far. Is it downstream or upstream? I never really know this. It's the push comes down. So let's call it upstream for today's conversation. The considerations are so far upstream of the software modernization that I actually think the platform modernization is taking precedence this time around.
It's the classic conundrum, right? Because again, I used to go into environments where we were doing things with Exadata or with Supercluster, and then talking through the aspects of the application upgrades along with the database upgrades and then along with the hardware. And there was always very much a reluctance, right, to try to take those things on at the same time. You did make a point earlier that Oracle's done this for 50 years. So they do, the whole upgrade cycle, they've got down pretty well. But you still just don't go turn a production database on a dime because there is risk that's associated with that. I mean, we have the same thing with the way that people operate our storage, and over time have come to trust Evergreen, right? Because it is running their production workloads. And so the first time they do the upgrade, it's usually at a less risky time of the business. And then they figure out, oh, it's nothing. And then we have the customers who posted on our community recently and said, oh yeah, I've done like 660 self-service upgrades, in Purity, and we do them all live when everything's running. So it sounds like here we're getting to a point, and you made the provocative point at the end there, that infrastructure starts to take more precedence because the database side is more well-known? Or is this just an opportunity for enterprises to go, well, we're going to be doing this database upgrade, we're on this storage environment or this infrastructure environment that we've already planned to get off of, there is something better or something different or something that's more well fit for our app and our database environment. Why don't we just go ahead and do that at the same time?
Kind of. I think it's also more nuanced in terms of the forces, the things forcing change this time around are much more numerous. So
because of all those variables you brought in with containers and with virtualization, the different aspects, or another set of variables?
Much more.
Or
bigger.
everything.
It's socioeconomic in nature. So let's think top down. You're in a new era. You're in money doesn't flow as freely now as the low interest rate era. You've also got more regulation that is very prescriptive about what you can and cannot do. You've got more platforms you can go onto. And so you think about what an enterprise's problem is like, this costs a lot.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Sure.
And go back 10 years, like the answer would be just go Postgres on the same system.
Yeah.
Now it's so multifaceted, but it's also, do you want to go to cloud? Do you want to stay on-prem? If you stay on-prem, what then happens? Is the strategy you've implemented as a regulated body inside a regulated industry still going to work in 5 years' time? With the advent of AI and the implementation of it, how do we bring live data closer to consumers, where consumers could be AI models or AI pipelines? How do we modernize our analytics pipeline? I was busy thinking about this. That's why I picked up the pen and I was like, evil thoughts. I was thinking about this while you said
That's like a daily occurrence for you.
You have no idea.
I might.
So I was sitting here, I was thinking, like, when Netflix came out, one of my biggest problems with it was click, 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 there's so much I want to do. And I think that's the problem of, like, it's decision paralysis, but it's not at the same level. It's just still, there's so much to consider as a part of the context window you have to make these decisions in. And so I go back to, why is the platform now becoming really important? Because the platform dictates what you can do downstream of it. So I can't put an Oracle database that's on FlashArray next to Databricks today. Like, that just doesn't exist. So if a customer has a cloud-first strategy, they have a cloud-first strategy because they want to bring all of these consumers closer together. Interestingly enough, Oracle's biggest competitor, SAP, has keyed into this with, like, their Snowflake and their Databricks alliances of how do we bring operational data closer to functional data and all of those beautiful things. And so to kind of plug this back into, like, Pure's view of the world, we simplify the storage layer of the stack. We're touching on data management. I'm very excited to see what we do there. But at the end of the day, like, if you walk into a customer and the customer has Pure, like, Pure is not something they need to worry about as one of these decision paralysis things. You know it's resilient, you know what it can do, and it's been through these transformation cycles over our life cycle.
Yeah.
And so that optionality equation from a value perspective is much more interesting when you get into these, okay, you've decided you're on-prem because you're in a regulated industry, for example. Obviously, Pure is not going to put a FlashArray next to a VM in OCI right now. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Right. But where we're going to lean on is where we've provided that risk reduction stuff. It works amazingly. And I'll go back to the Netflix analogy just because it's very true. Like, as you were saying, and I was like, holy cow, there's a lot for people to consider. There's so much risk.
Yeah. No, there is. Plus all the new features that are coming in, right? I mean, you touched on some of these, but there's risk of all those things that are connected in. But then, I have this written in my show notes, like, what's new in the zoo? Because you and I chatted about this, and, like, there's a lot of they don't just bring out a new software release because it's fun to do, right? It's iterative. It's the same thing that we do when we bring out new Purity versions. There's a lot of cool things that are in here. I wrote down versatility of the different capabilities, maybe leading some complexity. I don't know. That was some. Unpack that a little bit. You had that in your blog with, what's new, OLTP analytics, JSON, GraphLake, all these cool new capabilities, but what's the downstream impact to storage then if you have all these different traces and patterns and, operating modes that you now have to handle?
Okay, I'm going to make this one up a little bit on the fly. So let's think of it in terms of like the data pyramid. So at the top, you got data types, where there's loads of new data types that have emerged over the last 10 years because we want to be more flexible with data. Like JSON data types is just fantastic for its use case, whereas transactional data types, which is typically like just a row in a good old-fashioned table, that's actually remained very hardened throughout the years. But what we're also adding is like the ability to add more columns of those data types to the original format, because you don't want to go and invent a whole new data architecture, which is layer 2.
Yeah.
You want to be able to incorporate new functions within that existing data architecture. Key in, Oracle is one of the biggest databases on the planet. When I say biggest, most consumed in its ecosystem. Adding it to something that's already consumed makes those use cases much faster and more seamless. Like vector search is the most interesting one because everybody wants to talk about AI.
Yeah.
The way it's been implemented, like you could put this into a database and then you use the existing structures of the database, true in SQL Server 2025 as well.
Same thing.
You create indexes to speed up your accesses to your data. All of that's incredibly interesting, but you were talking about the pressures that are created on other things.
That's right.
More data types means more storage consumed.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
There was this big thing around, so you're adding vector data types. The indexes can be bigger than the data itself, one potential problem. Another is that adding vectors can create enormous amounts of storage bloat, like all of those are in the market. Sometimes true, sometimes not. At the end of the day, it's so use case specific, and I don't believe all of the AI use cases have emerged for us to make a concrete answer of this is going to bloat your storage 100% of the time. The only thing I can say is you're going to consume more storage.
No, just for sure.
But what's more interesting is the workload patterns that are going to emerge out of the back of that. So think about the compute layer. You've now got x86-oriented workloads, and then you have NVIDIA's GPUs or GPU-style workloads. And obviously, there's going to be push and pulls up and down the stack for how you consume from these. For this specifically, like I still see CPUs being king for the monolithic database. Like that's not going to change. What I do see is the monolithic database being run on x86 CPUs being a bigger piece of data infrastructure across the lifecycle, of which a downstream components could be GPUs. And so either way, TLDR, you're going to spend more money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's what it leads to. I mean, adding these capabilities. And again, that's something that's historical. As things advance, you're going to need more CPU. I mean, that was one of the value props that I tried to hone in on when I started here, right? Was like, well, our response time is faster and, it was a little hand wavy and all that, but, faster response times, better latency. Well, we could equate that to, fewer cores and,
but it is true.
Compute license on cores. Well, no, it is. But it's hard to measure, right?
Actually, it's not.
Granularly. No, at the time I was doing that, I thought it was really hard to measure granularly, right? To get down to, well, you pay this much licensing, but we can go to this much performance and that'll save you. I mean, it was very case by case.
I agree it's case by case, but
right.
It's actually like the calculation is very straightforward. So there's, in good old-fashioned Linux, I did this work with Cody last year, which is why I was like, gotcha.
That's why you got it. All right.
Is like, it's quite simple. So in Linux, there's a stat called IO-wait, which is waiting for storage to respond. Sure. IO-wait consumes core cycles, so nothing else can happen on those cores while it's waiting for it.
Yeah.
So in the universe of I've got a 24-core system, if 4 cores are consumed by IO-wait, I have to pay for 4 extra cores of my licensing. This is how Oracle licensing worked back in the day. I think it still works the exact same now for on-prem customers.
I don't think it's changed, yeah.
Yeah, so if you increase your ability to respond more quickly, IO-wait drops.
Yep.
So therefore, you could go for a 20-core system and still get the same outcome. Like the calculation does exist. It is case by case.
Yeah.
But if you overload your storage, obviously, you're going to end up in the same place of needing a 24-core system.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
No, it's true. It reminds me kind of one of the old jokes I used to like to tell, right? Because one of the answers to these wait states was always, well, just increase clock speed. And we would respond and say, doesn't matter what your clock speed is, right? Doesn't matter how fast that is turning, because if you're waiting for data to return from where it needs to come from cache, from storage, if you increase clock speed, all you're doing is waiting faster. Like that was, I got a little chuckle out of you on that one.
Well, I was just busy thinking about so I call my mentor in London probably at least once a week.
Yeah.
We have these long chats, and somehow these conversations end up in, back in freaking 1980s, we had these systems and you had to push the cards in, and he tells me the whole story. And he's like, it was really revolutionary when we increased clock speed from 1 gigahertz to 2 gigahertz. Yeah. I'm just like, wow.
Yep.
And that's why I was giggling. I was like, Ludes, second mentor.
I know. What do we do well at Everpure here, right? I mean, again, I go back to value props and things that I was working on when I started here. And I want to say not a lot has changed with what is beneficial, which doesn't sound exciting, but to me, it kind of is. To me, I look at that and go, we've been consistent. We provided those benefits 10 years ago with block storage for databases. And now as they've added more features, more functionality, the data types, as you mentioned, the workload traces, that gets interesting. That's a whole nother jag I wanted to go on digital experience, but we'll reserve that for another time. With Workload Planner, I was thinking, we could go beyond databases into other things. Stop. But what do we still do well? And then I'll say, what do we do better, or what have we added in that adds even more benefits to database operations? And this is cross-portfolio.
So interestingly enough, I'm not going to give product names to this, but I am going to talk about...
Platform.
Platform
We're
names.
We're a platform company.
And that's fine.
Yes.
But the way I'm going to pivot this is, I've been into marketing for a little too long now. 10 years ago, what would you say a fast restore speed for an Oracle database was?
What did we say? We used to post a number, right, with FlashBlade.
Yeah.
200? What was it?
200 what? Meg?
No. We were in gigs or something like that.
Yeah, okay. So let's use terabytes per hour.
Yeah.
Let's assume it was terabytes per hour.
Yeah.
Let's say it was 20.
Okay.
We managed to restore a 2-node rack Oracle database at 68 terabytes an hour 2 months ago. That's without compression. That's not doing fancy things. That's just literally say go. Mark Wilkinson did even better with SQL because he turned on compression and he got 3-digit restore. Whoa. Nocentino got really excited in 2022. Anthony Nocentino got excited in 2022 with his 50 terabytes an hour restore.
Yeah.
And we were like, nah, hold my beer, man. And so we blew all those numbers out of the water. So you just asked me, what do we do really well? Holy cow, man, I can recover a database at 68 terabytes an hour. I love that de-risk story.
Yeah.
A lot of the work we did last year on the Excel platform, and there's more work coming on newer product generations and things like that, holy cow, I managed to fit in 5U, 1 million IOPS in 5U, which from HammerDB's measurement perspective was something like 5 million transactions per minute. That's saying something. That's extreme consolidation. You don't need racks and racks of storage anymore. You can do it in this really condensed footprint. I still believe Pure has the biggest moat, which is the value prop in terms of availability and non-disruptive risk reduction. And I keep going through the market and I keep doing everything. I'm just like, the moat difference between Pure and competitors for just NDU alone is enormous. Evergreen as a service, as a technology, as a foundation for everything we do is one of the strongest value props that I need to lean in better on my 101 deck, just for a database estate, because these are lowest risk possible estates. There is no disruption to the business. It is no data loss. And we do it really well, and we've done it really well for a long period of time.
Yeah. And this is why DBAs love us, right? Even though DBAs don't always have a dominant say in the infrastructure choice, but when they realize what we can do for them upstream, downstream, back to your upstream, downstream question.
Still don't know.
I'm going to say upstream.
Okay.
I'm going to go upstream with just kind of storage as a wonderful foundation, as the platform, as a wonderful foundation. But we've heard this over and over again from folks that are either dedicated DBAs or in smaller organizations where you wear multiple hats and you're managing DBA and you're managing the database and the storage. Once they realize the level of simplicity and extracting that risk out makes their lives much easier.
My favorite moment of Pure like I remember this, was, and unfortunately it wasn't you and me having butterbeers in this conversation. It was when a customer was just talking to somebody. They'd adopted Pure, and they were like, "Oh, we used to run this whole thing." It was during the all-flash modernization era, and they were like, "Oh, we put our stuff on you, and it was just lightning fast."
Yeah,
like that's pretty cool, and that's like a single statement. It's really awesome to hear.
Yeah, or the one that I love hearing anecdotes about where the people on the app team call down to infrastructure or to database because the storage was upgraded to Pure and it's lightning fast, and they call down and they're waiting for the usual call of, hey, this bogged down, or hey, this slowed, to, yeah, I was running my batch job that I run and it got done in 30 seconds. What's broken? I went, no, what do you mean what's broken? Well, this usually takes 15 minutes or up to an hour, and I just ran it and it spit back in 30 seconds. You guys broke something.
You know what?
It can't be accurate. Something must be broken. They go, no, we just upgraded to the Everpure platform.
Remind me to tell you about my database slogan.
Yeah.
But like we should definitely lean into this of like Pure Storage taking away your coffee break.
Yeah. This is true, yes. Or the old, if you want to punish a DBA, make them test backups. All right, moving on. Last piece here. Again, I put this in just because I think it's interesting to understand the types of things that go on with one of these kind of upgrades. I think if folks listening or watching or database admins or even marginally in infrastructure space, they know. But for the ever average listener, it's interesting to kind of go through the steps, which is, what do you need to do for a successful deployment, but also, that checklist. And then also if it, extra layer of difficulty, how can you weave in where we help at the various steps?
I mean, extra layer of difficulty. I wrote it. That's not difficulty. That's
but you have to remember it.
I wrote memorization written on the paper. So ultimately, I actually went through this, and I really enjoyed writing the blog because I was like, Pure can do these things, and I was like, I knew it, but the way it joined up was really good in the lifecycle. So step one, assess the environment.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, Pure One has the ability to understand current state if you are on our storage, which is fantastic. Like the heuristics there are awesome. But we can also do trend analysis and plot where you're going. Like I'm not going to steal anyone's thunder, but we're also working on a way to extract reports from existing databases to be able to better position and size for future workloads. Second is like the environment prep. This is where the platform team actually gets to work. And our professional services team can also help with a lot of these migrations should there be risk in the portfolio, and we can de-risk it through those services equations, such as implementing your dev test UAT lifecycle, understanding where Pure touches on each, and if snapshots would help you in any reasonable way. Making sure that during each of those cycles, by the way, that you're meeting the appropriate performance is actually one of the biggest problems. You remember what I said about we changed something, we didn't know why we changed it?
Yeah.
Like, it's really nice not to have storage be your problem in that equation.
No.
Then we kind of think about it in terms of if snapshots don't work, like that 68 terabyte per hour recovery speed. Like, think about the development cycles if you've got a FlashBlade doing the recovery because that's how you want to do it.
You can do both, right? I mean, it's a belt and suspenders kind of thing ultimately, right? You want
That's
to use snapshot, right? Yeah, thank you. That was the guy that I used to call up who used to have the old analogies. No, but it is, right? You belt and suspenders. You got snapshots while you're going through that, but then also know that you have that really fast restore in the instance that maybe things don't work at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you kind of get to cutover preparation, which is you effectively have this weird problem in cutover where you don't want to lose the old system, but you need to establish the new system as dominant. So during cutover, if anything goes wrong, the ability to switch back to what you have is really important. Snapshot and state management. Also all of the other data services we have could instrumentalize that. But I go back to storage is not going to be your problem during these functions.
Yeah.
Then obviously optimize and iterate is really important. The arrays work as best as they're ever going to work out of the box. There's no magic knobs that you need to churn to make it a go. And so most of the tuning is going to be done at the platform. When I say platform, I'm talking compute and OS or whatever hypervisor you're sitting on and app layer. Like that just reduces, 1/3 of at least the cycle. And there's also no relearning storage. Let's assume you're on Pure. Like the life cycle just carries on as you go.
Yeah.
And I go back to that moat of between us and competitors. This is one of them of like the entire life cycle you're on Pure, you're going to stay on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you bring up, I mean, if we close, there's a few scenarios, right? So if you're already on Pure and you're looking at this upgrade to Oracle 26 AI, there's the parts that we do that are beneficial, that are additive in value, but that we're going to help you avoid this, what you wrote in the blog, upgrade tax. And I'm going to do air quotes for the people that are listening and not watching. If you're not on Pure and you're doing this, hopefully in hearing and watching this, you're aware of some of the challenges that may come about. And if those concern you, our teams are here to talk to you and talk about Pure so that if you ever want to do these upgrades in the future, you don't have to worry about some of those potential infrastructure challenges, right? Pivot the worry to the risk in the database upgrade, not in the infrastructure upgrade. And then I guess if you're not on Oracle at all, then you're probably not concerned. You're probably not going out and adopting it unless you're growing from, small born in the cloud company to massive giant enterprise needs, on-prem or cloud-based databases. But hopefully it's still informational.
But everything we've discussed applies to all databases.
Yeah.
Like all we're talking about is the risk-intensive enterprise database.
Yeah. No, very true. Any final thoughts around this?
I'm going to tell you about my slogan.
Yeah.
So the slogan for databases at Pure, or how Pure supports databases, is we make databases go vroom and not boom. I actually want to have a sticker made of that. It was really good.
So should you add that to the databases with 3 exclamation point sticker that Anthony and Ryan
I'm
hand out
with
everywhere? I think it's additive. I think there's a place for both, but you may need to create some, AI generated sort of 70s, 70s car with big mufflers or something like that for vroom, not boom.
I can see you're in marketing because that's great.
You like that?
Yeah, I love it.
I have an idea already. Actually, it's based on a sticker we used for a Pure user group in Detroit, where we kind of had that, except we had the pug, kind of the dog thing, sitting in one of those muscle cars. So I'll go pull that out and maybe we can generate something else. I think there's a dual branding option though to put databases, on there. That'd be great. Hey, thanks for coming on again. It's always a blast.
You're welcome.
I know you just kind of work across down over there, but it is good to be able to call on you. And what's next? What's your next? You're always thinking, you're always writing. So you got all this out on 26 AI. Is there something else coming soon?
I'm looking at a thesis I've been working on for a little bit, which is the economic value of data.
Yeah.
And there's actually an inverse of like, can you make a statement that data is causing a new form of economics to arise? The answer is no.
Okay.
Like data informs other economic indicators, and obviously is in of itself, but it doesn't create new markets in a very abstract sense. So instead, what's happened with that research is I've figured out that data's value is entirely proportional to how close you can get it to a decision maker or a decision tree. Weirdly enough, proven out by the AI thing. And so if you use that, the lens, you see the market, all sorts of very interesting things start to come of it.
There's a whole bunch of relevance and things with that. Yeah, I could see that with the decision maker. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that next one. Thanks for coming on for this one. As a plug for everyone, this is out on blog.everpuredata.com or purestorage.com, blog.purestorage.com. Just do a search on Oracle 26 AI and you can get far more into the details of what we covered here. And as always, thanks for checking out this episode of the Pure Report podcast. Great to have people like Andrew on. Great to have you out there watching and listening. Hope you found this one interesting. Tell a friend, tell a colleague, and we will keep the great guests like Andrew coming on to the program. And with that, we will wrap for Everpure. For my buddy Andrew Sillifant, this is Rob Ludeman saying, don't look back. Something might be gaining on you.